Welcome to the Top Order podcast. We still haven't sorted out the awkward bit looking into the camera. Bordy actually even gave us a couple of seconds without the music queued up just to make it even more awkward this week. Brilliant. But look, this week we are going to talk IPL. We're approaching the halfway stage in the tournament. The lineups all changed. The leagues all changed. People in form are not in form anymore. People who weren't in form are in form. We're going to talk IPL exclusively on the Top Order podcast, but I'm sure Lippy will squeeze in a Rickerton story or two. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned.
I really like what you did with the papers shuffling, by the way. It was very morning show. I liked it.
Oh, it was important stuff.
Yeah, we're a super sustainable podcast, aren't we?
It's a lot harder to shuffle a phone, I found.
Unless you've got an iPod shuffle.
Yeah, and then that's more of a wave than a shuffle. Anyway, should we talk about cricket?
Let's talk about cricket. So we are at the halfway stage in the IPL, IPL 16. Little bit of a change, I guess, over the course of last week. Rajasthan's form seems to have just sort of waned a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about all of the sort of the games that have gone on. We've certainly seen more and more fireworks, some more exciting finishes, some more big scores as well. But we've crowdsourced a few questions, haven't we, Stu? So I think you are going to be master controller in terms of the questions that have come through on our social channels. So I'm going to hand over to you. Where do we want to start with the listener questions this week?
I guess anyone who interacts with us on socials, it's usually me, which is why all the content is generally New Zealand based and I'm shouting out all the New Zealand players. But so I've kind of crowdsourced a few questions from all our different pipes that we operate. And why don't we start with this one? So Amir from Baltimore in the US asks, what is KL Rahul up to? Will he ever understand that his strike rate is hurting his teams? Open it to the floor.
What he plays for Look now, right?
Yeah,
it does.
Okay, so they're third. So they're not getting hurt too badly by KL Rahul's strike rate.
I think we're talking about the last game, aren't we?
Well, I think we're talking about the last. I'm sure Amir is talking about the last game, but also I think the last game in particular, but also in general. I mean, the KL Rahul critics have been on him for a long time. I think if you look around, the guy's averaged 50 plus for 5 consecutive seasons now. His strike rate is generally around 130, 135. Some of the other guys are around, like a Joss Butler for example, might be around 145, 150. So you could argue that, in recent years, I've always been probably a KL Rahul defender in the IPL for those reasons. But
the difference in that game, though, so let's put this into some context. So, we don't do a scorecard by scorecard sort of wrap up of the IPL, but to give the context of this game, they were chasing down the Gujarat Titans 135, which is just over, nearly 7 and over, isn't it?
Honest score.
Yeah. And Rahul was going along at about 7 and over himself. So, has done almost half of the work, but has then got out at the start of the 20th over. So I think he was out on the second ball of the over. And they've then had, a serious collapse in that over because everyone's got to come in and immediately put back to ball. Marcus Stoinis hold out first ball. Deepak Huda, the ball after that. Ayash Pradhani, I think, was the ball before that, actually. Mm-hmm. So if he'd have got the job done and struck at 100 or 105, you'd have said, well, he's paced his innings almost perfectly. In a low-scoring game. So I think if we look at this game in context, it was really just how disappointing that he got out in the way that he did, which is, he chipped one almost to deep long on. And that's put them in a position where there are other guys who've got to come in and hit a boundary from ball one, which isn't what you should be doing.
I think what Amir's trying to get out of us is, yeah, he was batting quite slowly. And if you're not winning games, then it shines on you that, you're right. He got half the runs and half the balls. I think he did his job, batted through. I think the lesson to take out of this is, when they talk about taking a game deep, taking it down to that 20th over, you've probably got a target finishing it in that 19th over, not letting it go through to the last over. I think that's the
takeaway, right? Yeah, because if you have a look at the rest of the scores in that particular match, if we're going to throw shade, Mayer's strike rate 126, Pandya 100, Pooran 14, Badoni 130, Huda 100. So no one else was striking at 175, making up for Rahul's 111 strike rate. But I think you're right. If you're going to have that mindset that you're going to take the game all the way to the end, you have to take it all the way to the end and win the game for your team. And I think that's the fair criticism of KL Rahul. Not regardless of what his strike rate is, if it's his job to take him to the end, and Myers and Pandya and Puran and Stoinis and Huda and everyone else goes off around him and does all the fireworksy stuff and he does all the grafty stuff, he has to be there at the last ball hitting the winning runs. And if he's not, then that's fair criticism of KL Rahul, I think.
I think the thing about Rahul this year, though, that, like I said, I've always been a defender of him. I think there's something, it does feel like something is going wrong for him now, or something's not quite right. You look at the numbers across what he's done. I rattled off all those other ones, averaging 50, strike rate, generally was around 130, 135. This year, averages down at 37, still very, very respectable for an opener in T20 cricket, but that strike rate is down at 113, which, isn't really acceptable. I know that, there are anchor roles and all that kind of stuff, but the bizarre thing is that when I first saw KL Rahul was that series that he came to New Zealand, I think, and he just smashed it everywhere. He was batting, I think, 4 or 5, came in and just, like, I remember him as a destructive cricketer, and I still feel like that's in him. You see those shots in him. But I think I saw the other day he's played out 2 maiden overs for the first time in his, in his IPL career as the first over of the game. He's not really making the most of that power play. Even in this game, I mean, you guys, defended the fact that he could have got them to the end, and he got them to the 20th over, scored half the runs, but they were cruising. They needed 30 runs off 35 balls, and like Raj said, you've got to win. You've got to win that in the 18th or the 19th. You're not taking that deep.
No, absolutely. And I think, as I said, I think if they'd have got the runs, no one would really be too fussed. But he should have been looking to finish it, particularly when you're chasing 130. So, the wicket was slow, let's be honest. It wasn't a great spectacle of cricket. But if you're going to have that kind of paced innings, I think that's where that conservatism means that you do try and get it done with plenty of time to spare, because it was proved how difficult it was for those guys to come in and try and hit boundaries from ball one.
And in fairness, 5 and 2 versus 4 and 3 is the current separator between first and sixth.
Yeah, exactly.
So like those kinds of games can have big impacts when it comes to the back end of the tournament.
Yeah, you can't afford to be losing that games. And he seems to me like someone who's almost afraid to get out. And I don't know what, like, you can't be a T20 opener who's afraid to get out. So I do think there's something going on. It's obviously something to monitor for the rest of the tournament, because he's such a crucial player for them and they're a good side.
While we're on Look Now, was there another question on Look Now players that we should cover while we're talking about them?
There is,
mixing the Gatorade.
Yeah, Christian from Pretoria wonders, when are LSG going to select Quinton de Kock? Which, here's a guy who just scored, I think, a 40-ball 100 from whenever it was against... I forget who they were playing.
Yeah, it was West Indies. Yeah, West Indies. And it was at altitude and everybody went air miles. It was, a game with a lot of runs, but a fair comment. So, who wants to answer how they would balance their sideboarder? You're our man for permutations, I think.
Well, I mean, if you have a look at the series that Puran is having, so the current overseas players that are batting, Kyle Mayers at the top of the order has effectively replaced Quinton de Kock. Puran is batting at the difficult number 4 position, and Marcus Stoinis is the finisher. So you would think that naturally de Kock would come in for either Mayers, who would drop down.
I think that's who we would have thought at the start of the tournament, didn't we? We were all saying...
Or for Puran and Mayers drops from...
Because Puran's keeping wicket.
Yeah, exactly.
But Puran's had a reasonable tournament, right? So his tournament so far... Go ahead, Raj.
Just to come over the top of you there, Baldy.
You can.
Mayers, Stoinis and Puran, they've actually scored almost half the runs for LSG, and they've scored at over 150 strike rate.
And KL Rahul's probably got most of the rest of them.
That's it. So that's your runs. Who are you going to replace there? Mayers maybe, but he might bowl as well as a bowling option.
Yep. Yeah. I think the natural candidate to come out is Puran, but he's had a reasonable tournament, particularly at the start. 36, 32, 11 not out, 62 were his first 4 bats. So if you have a look at those first 4 games, he's done his job, right? Particularly in number 4, which is tricky. Then he's gone sort of 0, 29 and 1. So the pressure might start to come on now for Nicholas Puran if you've got a ready-made like-for-like replacement with Quinton de Kock, who could probably bat it for if he needed to.
And I think you mentioned it, like they're third on the table already, like at the moment. So, it's not like they're hitting the panic button.
Well, and I think it's it's still a long tournament, isn't it? There's still, 63, yeah. So there's still a lot of time to go. And I think they can actually see how that plays out between Nicholas Puran and Mayers. If Mayers keeps going, striking at 150, looking like a cross between, I don't know, Brian Lara and Kevin Peterson,
and Mike Tyson. He's built huge.
Just keep him going. And Stoinis has chipped in with the ball as well through the course of the tournament. So I think for me, if you're looking at that kind of balance piece, it's just unlucky for being late, isn't it, Quinton?
They've got a lot of time in the rumour mirrors between games. So they played on April 22nd, and their next game is on April 29th. So they've got a week between matches. Their next game is against Punjab. I think that is a must-win game for Look now. If they're going to keep pace with Rajasthan, who they've just beaten, and Gujarat, who they've just lost to, who are the top 2 teams at the moment, they really need to win that game against Punjab and get their season rolling, because they've got RCB and CSK, who are also potential frontrunners.
Well, I think that leads on nicely to our next question, because you mentioned teams at the top of the table, and the one you didn't mention is CSK. And Dhoni fan 18 had a very big question for us.
Let's talk about, I reckon this question is going to be pro Dhoni then.
Well, it says it's actually about will MSD retire after CSK win the title. So I guess it's saying CSK is going to win the title.
He's counting some chickens there.
Is the announcement, but is he going to go out and use those big guns of his to lift that trophy?
He has been in the gym, hasn't he?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I'm very, very impressed. But they're coming good. CSK, I know there was a little bit of doubt to start with, but boys, how real do you think this is?
Well, do you want to go, Raj?
I think we're going to get back to Devon Conway at some stage, but I just think that everyone's standing up. Like, Gaikwad's batting well, Conway's batting well. You could name a number of different batsmen there, and they're doing the job with the ball. So they're just doing the simple things and doing them well.
Ajinkya Rahane.
Yeah, he's the other one.
We were talking earlier on about KL Rahul coming onto the scene as a destructive batsman. As Rahane reinvented himself, I mean, oh my goodness me, some of that hitting recently has been amazing. But we've got a question about that later.
Oh, we can throw it in now. We may as well throw it in now because T-Man from Norwich asks, is Ajinkya Rahane the man to Bazball India to the World Chess Championship mace? I mean, it is incredible the stuff he's doing at the moment. Like, what was it, 70 off about 29 balls or something in the last game? Yeah, this is just a Rahane I've never seen before. I didn't know that he had it in his locker. He's just smashing it to all parts. And, I don't know, there's a gap in that side now, that India side with Shreyas Iyer in at number 5. It's kind of ridiculous to say, smashing it to all parts in T20 cricket can get you into the test side. But Test cricket's a different game now, isn't it?
It is. But before we get too carried away with the CSK form here, let's have a look at the teams that they've beaten so far in the competition. How far back do I have to go? That's April 3rd. Hang on, let me go back and find their form.
We'll edit this out, shall we?
Riveting podcast.
No, shut up.
You want to filter on that.
They lost to Gujarat. They beat LSG. They beat Mumbai. They lost to Rajasthan. They beat RCB and they've beat Sunrisers. So that's a bit of a mixed bag, really. They've lost the 2 losses have been against reasonably good teams, but they have beat some reasonably good teams themselves. So I don't know. I'm not sure that this CSK run of form is real yet. Like, their next couple of games are Rajasthan again, then they play Punjab, then they play LSG again. If they win the 2 big games against LSG and the Royals, I think we do have a case that this form from CSK is genuine. I think they may be flattering to deceive, to borrow a phrase from you, Adam, a little bit so far, even though they're 5-2.
Yeah, and look, and I think we've highlighted a lot of the batting lineup there. Obviously, Gaikwad, Conway, we've talked about Rahane. From a bowling perspective, relying quite heavily on Ravi Jadeja. Moeen Ali, I think, is probably their next best bowler from a stats perspective. So I think they're probably going to need to, as the tournament goes on, get particularly, some seaming up there. I think Deshpande's bowled okay.
An injury too.
That's been the problem. They've had all these injuries, right? Stokes is injured, Chahar's injured.
Yeah.
And they've, like you say, though, they've managed to kind of step up. Patirana's come in and done a nice job.
And that's what you've got to do, right, is, keep yourself in it, because we know, we talked about this at the start, we still think the Delhi Caps are gone in terms of the tournament. I think they've only won 1 game now. But we were talking about this, and, there's teams that can go on a roll, and it's a tournament where you can just get that momentum. You play every couple of days. There's the double headers at the weekend. So all of a sudden, a week really, really changes things if you win 3 games in that period of time. So look, whilst they can hang in there as long as they can, I think they're going to need to find a little bit more with the ball. I think if they're going to, if MS Dhoni is going to be flexing those biceps and getting those traps up.
Well, they're a good side, though. I think you mentioned, Baldy, earlier that they're just a team built on all-rounders, and we talked about this a long time ago when we were talking about the changing shape of 2020 cricket, just having 8 all-rounders. You have the luxury to bat Ravi Jadeja down at 7 or 8 in a 2020 comp. Like, they just bat all the way down. It doesn't matter if you lose wickets early on. It just means, you're bringing in Ben Stokes, or you're bringing in Ravi Jadeja, or
Shivam Dubé, who's played well.
MSD, who's striking at almost 200. I think before last night's game was actually leading, the leading strike rate in the tournament.
And look, interesting question, and I'll throw it back at our Dhoni fan or anyone else in the socials. Does he, because he's got a habit, hasn't he, of deciding when he's in enough form to get himself up the order and actually influence the game, batting at, maybe 3 or 4, or, you might even see him come out and open the bat, and he's that kind of guy. Be interested to see what fans think about whether or not MSD is going to play this role where he comes in with the view of, he's going to try and hit every ball for 6 and strike at 200, or is he still good enough to come in and do a job at 4 or 5? So that's a question back to listeners on the socials. Let us know what you think MSD might do throughout the course of this tournament.
And he has played every game, hasn't he, so far, I think, which is one of the questions we had in our warm-up. How many games was he going to play? The answer so far is all of them.
And just to finalise the question for Dhoni fan, do we think this is the final season that we see MSD? I actually had in my notes last week for our chat, do India throw out an SOS to Dhoni, because there's no, Rishabh Pant doesn't appear to be coming back anytime soon. Hopefully his recovery does go well.
Although Ridham and Saha are going really well in this tournament. He might just be putting his hat in the ring with Ishan Kishan as well. I think he plays. I think he plays another season.
Yeah.
I think he just decides 6 weeks out from the tournament if he wants to play. He's obviously been spending some time in the gym.
Looks super fit, doesn't he?
I think he'll go around again.
Look,
I don't think they'll win the title though. That was the other half of the question.
I agree with that as well.
You've sewn up.
We've lost a fan.
Yeah.
We will stay with CSK, and we'll finally get to talk about some New Zealand stuff, because there's one from Wellington, more a statement than a question, from Jimmy, who says, Devon Conway is the best all-format player in the world. Discuss.
Well, Mr. Neesham, we agree. And we'd love to have you on the podcast. Please join us.
Yeah. No, I think I texted you after he got that 80-odd or 70-odd.
Hard to keep up. The scores are just flying along. 450s in a row now, I think.
He just looks so classy. He can play cricket. He's got that sort of Ricky Ponting-esque technique, but he can still play it all the way around the ground. And he does things like running the ball between short third man and backward point. It's just really good to watch. And I think that he's averaging, I did have a look at his actual averages. He's averaging 50 in Test cricket, 45.8 in one-day cricket, and 45.7 in 2020 I cricket. That's pretty impressive.
That is impressive. And I was trying to think of who are the candidates. I mean, it was once upon a time, I think Kohli had 50 plus in all 3 formats. Yeah. I don't know what Babar's is. Babar Azam, he's certainly got to be up there.
Feels like he's been up and down a little bit of late in the last 18 months or so, but there was a time when he was really dominant.
But in terms of like the guys that actually play all of those 3 formats, there's not a lot of them that are up there. I'm probably missing someone, but I mean Conway actually, as ridiculous as it might sound, I feel like he's got to be up there, and he just delivers. I mean, honestly, the way he took apart Janssen in that game was just fantastic. He's just got all the shots all around the ground, and the weird thing is, I still feel like when you watch him that he has a quite obvious weakness on that inside edge of his bat when that people come around the wicket to him, target that inside edge of the bat, and he has got out a few times there, but the margin for error for those guys is just so small, isn't it? Because you're a fraction outside off, he smashes you through the covers, you're straight, he hits you down the ground, he's got that flick off his legs.
You're less likely to get that ball in 2020 cricket. I guess that's probably more of a test cricket weakness, but yeah.
Certainly the most informed cricketer at the moment.
That's what I would say. I think definitely there's no arguments on current form.
Really?
But
what about Faf?
Yeah, well, look, Faf's looking good, but he's not playing all 3 formats, is he?
Sure.
But Faf's in pretty good form.
He's pretty good
He's
form.
in very good form, and Pat should be playing more than 1 format. I just look, it's one of those things you don't want to sort of, rain on someone's parade, but we've talked about how quickly that can change in the IPL. He gets run out, he has a couple, a couple of low scores, and it's a slightly different conversation, but certainly the form he's in at the moment is pretty scintillating. And as a batter,
got momentum.
He's got the big mo, hasn't he?
Well, for Jimmy's sake, let's hope it continues. Touch wood that Devon Conway continues to have a bit of good form, and Jimmy can continue watching him. Next question.
Absolutely. Okay, this one, we'll change tack a little bit. Big bopper from Tiawa Mutu's kept it pretty short and sweet. Why do the Sunrisers suck?
I reckon you should answer this.
Yeah.
You're
No,
singing
your
their
team's
praises.
due.
They're your
Just as
team.
long as you don't sing the song.
Well, there's no real motivation to sing the song at the moment. I don't know. It's I can't. I was so confident. I was really, really confident that they would be a good side. And I think the thing is, like, I had tried to figure this out myself, and they've got no bowlers in the top 10, no batters in the top 20, only 2 batters in the top 40 in terms of strike rate, Klaasen and Markram. Natarajan, Umran Malik are both going at 10s. Washington Sundar hasn't taken a wicket. Bhuvi Kumar has only got 3 or 4, I think. They're just the guys aren't performing. I think it's as simple as that. When I run through all of their names, I still think they've got the side and they've kind of got the balance to be a good team.
There's 5 or 6 household names in their bowling attack. There really is. They should be restricting sides a lot better than they are. I mean, they've let Rajasthan, a good batting side, got 200. KKR got 200, but they won that game anyway. I don't know. It feels like that bowling attack is good enough to win half their games of cricket. Now, 2 and 4 at the moment, so, they're only 1 game off that, but it just feels like their batting is, which we thought, actually, in the preview show, we thought they were a bit light in the batting.
Well, I remember saying, I think, we just talked about CSK, right, and all the names in there that can win a game for you. And we're saying maybe they were a bit light on those match winners, to win you 6, 7, 8 games on their own. Probably just a little light.
I think, for me, confused planning as well from the Sunrisers. So Harry Brook, if I'm right, and look, I think he's a fantastic cricketer. I think I've long said he's going to go on and have a pretty decent 3-format career. Maybe not quite as good as Devon Conway, but he certainly burst onto the international scene. He was batting down at his normal position of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
He struggled to get going. All of a sudden, they've thrown him up the top of the order. He obviously scored 100 when he did that. But I think when you've got that kind of thinking that, 1 minute you've gone to an auction, you've picked up some players, this guy's going to bat at 4 or 5, and then it's actually let's throw him up and see what happens when he opens. It just says to me, that they're not necessarily set on what their game plans are. And I think Janssen with the ball's been really disappointing so far in this tournament. And look, that can happen to seamers, can't it? Particularly, we've seen Lockie's got a bit of tap, even Joffre's got a little bit of tap. These are small grounds, big bats, or all that kind of stuff. Again, they're gonna need to really rally to turn that around. But as we've said, with everything, and I'm going to give the same answer to all of these questions, a week's going to be a long time in this tournament. And if they win the next 3 games, all of a sudden it's a different conversation around the Sunrisers next week, isn't it?
I think your point about the muddled thing is pretty fair in terms of how their side has come together as well, because they're obviously we've just named Markram, Klaasen, and Janssen, 3 of their guys who they seem to be core overseas players. Personally would be trying to get Phillips in there. I feel like he's got a lot to offer. Obviously very biased in that in terms of the New Zealand perspective, but those 3 guys were all late to the tournament. So you've picked your side, you've gone and you've figured out where the guy's batting. I think they had Abhishek Sharma opening the batting. And now it's all sort of changed again. And they just haven't found any rhythm throughout the whole tournament.
And all those players that we're kind of mentioning, those big gun batters for the Sunrisers, they're all overseas players. Like, you have a look up and down their roster. Where are the Indian players that are the household names that are the gun batters that can win you games? Yeah, I mean, there is, to be fair, Agarwal and Tripathi and Abhishek Sharma are there. But if you look at some of the other top elite sides in this tournament, those sides have got 2 or 3 gun Indian batters,
established Indian players, aren't they?
Yeah. And they can win you big games. And I just think that these guys might win you 2 games a year, but that's not going to be enough, I think.
And Glenn Phillips can't be far off getting back into that side. You would have thought if their form does continue like this for the next couple of games, they're going to maybe have to say, well, Harry Brook, have a little rest here. We're going to go with the Phillips. It gives you a keeping option as well potentially. So could even be in there for Klaasen, I think would be the other option. So to keep it New Zealand based, Lippy, you never know. Might see Glenn Phillips with the gloves on.
I hope so. Yeah, big game for them overnight against Delhi. Probably, by the time this pod comes out, we'll know how that's gone. But look, I think a loss for either of those 2 teams, and
it's curtains.
It's just about curtains as just because the table is so compressed, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Do we really believe that a couple of games is curtains at this stage in the tournament?
Well, I think I do, in terms of the fact because everyone is so tight. I think if it wasn't, if there were 4 teams streaking ahead, I would feel differently. But because then one of those teams can drop off and you can go on a run. But the fact that everyone is playing well, or everyone is kind of in the middle of the pack at least, means that everyone is still beating each other and they're kind of staying ahead of you, even if you do win in some ways.
And it's not like they're on a roll already. They have to create that momentum first.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to something else. This username is far too confusing for me to repeat. Looks like a random collection of letters and numbers. So may or may not be a bot, but it's a good question. So let's go with it. Is Arshdeep Singh the best death bowler of all time? And I think that's obviously relating to the fact that he just
let's move on.
Destroyed some stumps the other night.
No,
simple as that. Not.
I've got 2 words for you. Wasim Akram.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably fair.
But Waqar Younis.
Just be a bit more current. Harshal Patel was quite good for RCB overnight as well.
He was very good. I do think it was pretty fun watching him smash those stumps. I saw that I think they cost 50,000 New Zealand dollars.
The stumps.
Those whatever they are, the light up bales and the stump mics and all that kind of stuff. And he smashed the middle ones that have all of that material in them, and he's smashed two in and over. So very expensive day for the broadcasters.
Phrasing this question slightly differently, is Arshdeep Singh as a genuine death bowler playing his way into India contention for World Cup tournaments? Because India have got some really, really good bowlers, established bowlers, but they're missing Jasprit at the moment. Bhuvi Kumar has not been performing particularly well, who's been a staple of their white ball side. I wonder if maybe his performance, like we saw with T. Natarajan and a couple of other players who've kind of worked their way into the Indian side off the back of the IPL, maybe there's room for him as a genuine death bowler at the World Cup.
Look, absolutely. And look, I said no just because no, he's not the best of all time. But he certainly impressed that, the stats are there. I think we called him out in the preview show as well as one to watch. So look, absolutely. And I think we've got a couple of questions like that. So maybe I think we can cover this Arshdeep question in with who else is playing themselves into potential contention for the Indian side. Because I think there's a number of players, and the way that India have gone recently is they've not been shy to blood players in their white ball formats and even in their test side. They've probably used more players, I would suggest, than any other cricketing nation over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. And they haven't made many bad picks, have they? There's not too many that are one-test wonders. You look at someone like Aksa Patel's come in and, all of a sudden, he's a superstar. There's a number of people that have got given those opportunities, they've just taken them. So, he could be another one of those. I
do think in the white ball format, though, they kind of trip over themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
Too many riches.
Well, they've not won a World Cup for a while, have they?
Boys, there's a question about on this.
Oh, there's a question. Sorry, I've ruined that.
No, you haven't ruined it. You've led perfectly into it. Let's move it. I had it later, but let's move it now. So Rahul Patel from at Rahul Patel on NZ on Twitter asks, with the amount of talent on show in the IPL, what are your thoughts on India floating an A team in white ball cricket and playing against the associate nations in an attempt to qualify for the World Cups? Deep sighs all around the table.
Well, I'm trying to answer this question tactfully because off air I did not answer it.
No, let's start with the positive.
Can I ask you to answer it the way you answered it off air? Because I thought that is actually pretty close to the real answer.
Well, I think India can talk about having. I mean, they've got the deepest talent pool in world cricket. I think that's fair to say. However, to Raj's point, they haven't won a World Cup in a long time. So maybe if they win a World Cup, then we can start talking about having multiple sides, in international tournaments. I think India need to get their first 15 in order, and then we'll worry about, whether or not there's an academic exercise as to whether or not they should be fielding 2 teams in a World Cup. I don't mind the idea of, to get to the World Cup as an associate nation, you have to beat the Indian second team or beat the home team's second team to get into the World Cup. Like if it was hosted in New Zealand or whatever, you have to beat New Zealand A to get into the World Cup. I don't mind that. That's just a fantasy exercise. I'm not pretending that's a real thing. But yes, India should win a World Cup, and then we can start talking about whether or not they should have an A side in there.
I do think the idea of, I mean, tend to agree about that. But I do think the idea of expanding A cricket is sort of a good one. And I don't know that, I don't know, I don't know how you fit it in because we've got so much cricket and stuff going on. But the idea that sides could actually come here and play New Zealand, like I love the A program for New Zealand. I think it's played a huge impact in our growth as a cricketing nation.
100%.
Developing your talent and all that kind of stuff. And say India doesn't want to play, doesn't want to send a side to Zimbabwe or do whatever, doesn't want to play those nations, thinks they're above it and all that kind of stuff. What's the harm really in saying, okay, well, we'll send an Indian A side, or I guess they kind of do that in various things
it's
anyway.
It's sort of now, right?
But why? I guess if the money was there, why can't some sides go and tour India and just play their A side, or just play New Zealand A, or whatever?
So that makes A cricket exciting. So I can't remember who mentioned it off air. It was one of you guys, but the concept of having India A and India play in a tri tournament or a quadrangular tournament. Now there's some enterprise. There's some bums on seat stuff.
4 contracts. That would be great.
That
would be awesome.
With some jeopardy on the line. That would be incredible.
We've had that in world cricket. Australia used to.
Yes,
it was fantastic unless you were probably in the Australia team, because I think if you listen to a lot of the players, they found that the A team got better support at the MCG in a game Australia, because everybody
loves an underdog.
Loves an underdog. So I'll answer the question and say, even if they win a World Cup, that should never happen. So I'm going to be pretty unequivocal with this. World Cup is the best 11s from countries that are eligible to play in that, and no, you can't have an A side as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't think there's any.
But it's a fantastic question because it's got us all talking about.
Don't get me wrong,
and disagreeing over it.
I'd like to watch it on TV. I just don't think it should happen.
Cricketing Hunger Games. It would be great. Great to watch. India versus India.
I do love the idea of more A cricket though. Full support of that
idea.
Let's go back to Punjab, and because Jacques from Cape Town has asked, will Sam Curran be the next England captain at the T20 World Cup?
No. No, I think it'll still be Jos Buttler. I think he's not having a bad tournament for Rajasthan. I think he's going to be a fixture of that white ball side, because I can't see him getting into or even wanting to get back into Test cricket. So until he retires, he is going to be a white ball player. And I think he's got a couple of cycles in him. Has Sam Curran shown a massive amount of maturity in the last 18 months as a white ball cricketer? We only need to look to that T20 World Cup. His death bowling was absolutely phenomenal. His batting in this IPL has been sensational. And now as captain, in franchise cricket, he's putting himself in the shop window to give that sort of maturity. He's clearly a really, really good cricket brain. So look, absolutely a leader. I don't think he'll be captain at the next T20 World Cup though.
And I was really surprised when I looked through his stats, actually, that he hasn't scored more runs for England in T20 cricket. I think his highest score is 24.
I was going to say, is that an opportunity thing?
It's a little bit of an opportunity thing. And look, I think it's that he hasn't necessarily blossomed in the way that I thought he would. And I had this conversation with you a long time ago, and we won't repeat that because it was a pretty outlandish comment from myself. But he was, in my view, a better batting option than bowling option when he first burst onto the scene. He's actually turned into a little bit of a guy that now, he's probably not quite got the wheels for Test cricket as a left arm seamer, and he's not really developed probably as a genuine 4-day number 6 batter. But in white ball cricket, he's obviously really, really explosive. But I think he probably hasn't had those opportunities. And one of the reasons he's probably not had those opportunities is because he's been playing international cricket rather than playing, a plethora of first class cricket where he would have probably developed certainly his batting, I think, a bit more over the course of the last couple of years.
But it's also with the strength of that white ball team England have had. I watched, was it Jason Roy, I think, overnight, just absolutely destroying the ball. It's just incredible the power he's got. And, we don't think of him as, I don't think of him as a first picked white ball cricketer. You probably do, opening the batting, but,
I don't at the moment, to be honest.
It's incredible to watch his power anyway.
England have got so many options in that in that all-rounder space and in their batting space at the moment. It's just incredible.
And we've talked about this as well, but at top of the order is the place to bat, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you want to bat, and everyone can't bat there now.
No. Oh, look, that innings he played last night, and I guess we've just had a question on Arshdeep. We've just had a question on Sam Curran. I think that the point of these questions coming up is probably the fact that Punjab is starting to put it together. And
they're surprising me. They're performing a lot better than I kind of expected them to be. I expected them to struggle this year, and they've been playing good. Binksy, before we move off Sam Curran, is he in England's white ball squad for the World Cup? 15-man squad?
Yeah.
Okay. Good, strong. That's the right answer. Yeah, good.
Well, I think he was player of the tournament, wasn't he, in the T20 World Cup?
T20, yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure that no one had gone past him, and we got out of sight, out of mind.
I would say outside of Josh Butler. So if we're doing that, I reckon they've already booked the airline tickets, and I think he's in 1B or 1C.
Okay,
in that business class lineup. Yeah,
nice. Wow. Okay. And that team we haven't talked about too much so far on the podcast, or in this episode at least. John from Sydney wants to know: are Rajasthan in form or not?
Great question. So I'll take this one because the last podcast we had, I said that they were, and then they lost 3 on the bounce. So for all Rajasthan fans, I apologise. I shall make no further comments as to the form of the Rajasthan Royals for the rest of this tournament, other than to say that, yes, I was directly responsible for them losing their last 2 games.
It's interesting. Yeah. Again, another side that I looked at the start of this tournament, and again thought kind of, they're definitely going to be right up there at the top again. Started off really, really well. But when you look at their actual games that they've kind of won and lost, they did beat, CSK and Gujarat, but the other 2 wins are against Delhi and Sunrisers. Kind of, sort of felt like they probably should have won that game last night against RCB. We're recording this on Monday night here in New Zealand time. Trent Boult runs in, gets Kohli first ball for his 100th IPL wicket. It was pretty fun, but... then it kind of just, the wheels fell off a little bit, and I don't know. Yeah, they're a really hard side to get a handle on, I think, at the moment.
It's an interesting one because now we're probably halfway into the tournament, there or thereabouts. You start to think, will they hit form? Not have they, it's will they, because they have to start getting that momentum turned around. They need to show us something in the last few games. That loss to RCB, the bowling, even though Trent Boult got Kohli first ball, and we know it was definitely out because Kohli walked straight off without even looking to get a review or anything. But they still put 189 or whatever it was on. And it looked like it was going to be a lot more, but they pulled it back.
I think the thing with Rajasthan for me is we talked about this probably the first week, right? So at that point, I think Jaswal, Sampson, Butler had all got runs. They've got players that, how good was Padakal last year? How good was Parag last year? Shimron Hetmeyer, we'll talk about him for a different reason a little bit later in the podcast. I think if, 1 or 2 of those guys comes into some form and supplements what, the quality that they've got at the top of the order, we talked about 2 losses, but Butler's scored runs almost every time he's batted. Jaswal's looks awesome. And then from a bowling perspective, Trent Boult, Ravi Ashwin have been pretty good. So I think they're closer to being in form than out of form. And if they can get another one of those batters in the middle order, and maybe that, maybe the fact that they've lost a couple of games and people have had an opportunity to get out and bat might actually just help them go on a little bit of a run the next couple of games.
They've been involved in some really close games. If you have a look at the games that they've won and lost, so they have beat CSK, who are at the top of the table, and Gujarat, who we all thought were a really good side. So they've beaten those 2 teams in close games. They've also lost close games to Punjab by 5 runs, LSG by 10 runs, and RCB by 7 runs. So they're not getting smoked. The games that they've won big against the Caps and the Sunrisers, who are at the bottom of the table, they've smashed them. So they're taking care of business against the teams lower in the table, but they are kind of, at this stage, there's sort of 2 wins, 3 losses against the other sort of top sides, but all of those games are close. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they just tick a little 1% here or there, as Adam says, they could potentially go on a bit of a run. So I'm not too concerned about the Royals. I still think they're a good cricket side.
Oh, I agree. I do think the one thing that is a little bit different, I'm sure there are other personnel things that have happened over I can't keep track of all the team movements, but I do think missing Prasad Krishna is a big loss for them. Obviously he's an international player, so fair enough. But it's sort of just that one. They do feel like they're missing that one, maybe missing one steady bowler, who just does the job. I know Sandeep Sharma's come in, done a reasonable job, but Krishna and Boult up front always were very reliable. Boult takes the wickets. Krishna was very reliable. I do think that they've felt that loss a little bit, and if they can't find someone to be that consistent other seamer, then it's going to be tricky. You guys mentioned RCB before, and Faf, the busted horse from the North Shore, asks, are Faf du Plessis and Trent Boult the poster boys for so-called T20 mercenaries living their best lives?
I can hear the person saying that too.
I think that's a little bit harsh, given the service that both of them have put for their respective cricket boards. I think Faf du Plessis obviously finished off as captain, didn't he? And did a great job, I think, for South Africa in, let's be honest, some pretty tough times for them off the field from a political perspective. And Trent Boult, look, has earned the right to go and do that. I know we'll have a few listeners disagree with us around that. You know, you should put your country at the pinnacle and all that kind of stuff. But we've talked about, I think Baldy talks about intergenerational wealth to support, multiple generations of your family to succeed in the afterlife. So look, I don't think you can have a crack at those guys and call them mercenaries. Unless you're being really, really harsh. But look, I think what they're certainly showing is that more and more players are going to make that decision. And I think the danger is that more and more players start to do it when they've got probably a little bit more time left in their international tank. Let's be honest, Faf du Plessis had given away international cricket, ostensibly to go and play loads of franchise cricket. Trent Boult probably had at least 18 months of no question that he was a format player for the Black Caps. What we don't want to see is guys at 28, 29 making that call, because then I think, that word could be used. But it's down now, I think, to the international boards to structure things so that they probably go the other way now and don't have these central contracts. They actually incentivize you to play international cricket with money, and then allow you to go off and play in the really, really big ticket events from a earnings perspective.
Yeah, I think it's interesting watching those two play at the moment. They look like they have the weight of the world off their shoulders.
Yeah, they're having so much fun.
They're having fun playing cricket. And it's an interesting thought when you think about it that, these guys were going around doing 270 days on the international circuit playing 3 formats. Why wouldn't you just, maybe just go and play a little bit of white ball cricket, play some franchise tournaments, hopefully after you've done your time on the international circuit. But it looks like a great time they're having.
Yeah,
jealous of them.
You look at Joe Root, who hasn't played a game yet for Rajasthan Royals. He looks like he's having the absolute time of his life. He's got his family there. And I think we go back to
this. He's got Yuvi Chahal to play with. That's why.
And I think
hang out with every day.
The stresses of international cricket, he's talked pretty openly about that. And I think in that COVID year, so what would that have been, 2020, 2021, he had 305 out of 365 days in a hotel room. And yeah, like you say, now it looks so fun to be around that tournament. And Faf and Trent living their best lives, I reckon.
Trent Boult, I think he's got 3 maidens this IPL.
That's incredible.
Bowling?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
So can we just use some of those words there? Mercenaries, maybe not.
Yeah,
poster boys, absolutely. They are.
Let's take the mercenaries out of that question, and just say that I think the point that Raj made, that the guys are they're a great advertisement for actually just going out and isolating yourself to these certain formats and things, because they're playing unbelievably well. Faf, honestly, that feels like a huge loss that he's not playing international cricket, because he's just, like you say, he was coming to the end of his international career, but the way he's batting, like he could walk.
He's still got some. Yeah, he's still got some time in the tank.
He's got 10 years left playing 2020 cricket.
I mean, he's just destroying. They're 12 for 2 yesterday, and he's just smashing Sandeep Sharma out of the park. It's amazing.
Can we just talk about that for a second? Because, for Trent, it's probably more likely that he would get picked to go to the World Cup for New Zealand. I don't know if
I'm still 100% confident. Injury aside, he's at that World Cup.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Other people don't agree, but
which is great.
I think so.
Faf, if he doesn't go, is a little disappointing, but it would be great to see him play for South Africa. I think it makes them a better team.
I think he's retired.
I know he is, but I think it would be great. I think it would be good for South Africa. He'd make them a better team. wouldn't it be great if the cricket schedule had less international tournaments and they meant more, like they were a little bit more scarce, like the Football World Cup and the Olympics, and you actually went, okay, I'm going to do my contract schedule around the World Cup in 2027 or around the World Cup in 2025, and I want to pick my side and make sure that we've got the right players in our team for that. And these guys are going, yeah, okay, cool, I can play club cricket, I can do all this franchise stuff, but I know that I want to peak for the 2025 World Cup or the 2027 World Cup. That would be awesome, rather than having to have a World Cup every year.
It's almost
what we got right now.
And the way you're talking about it almost makes me think of rugby, right? So you have the Rugby World Cup every 4 years. There's only the one form, I guess there's sevens as well, but the main format that the guys who play 15s and the girls who play 15s, well, it's a bit more, and a bit more mixed in the women's game. But the men's game in particular, they target that World Cup in the 15s format every 4 years. They take sabbaticals away. They go away and they might take a couple of years. You think about someone like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who's come from rugby league to target for a very small amount of time to go, okay, I want to try and make the All Blacks for the Rugby World Cup for this, 2023 World Cup.
Or a Lions tour.
Yeah, or a Lions tour or whatever it is. And then they go away and do something else. And cricket, I think the fact that these T20 World Cups coming in have kind of thrown all of that, because if they weren't there, you'd still have that cycle with the ODI World Cups, and then players could maybe go away and play 2 years of T20 franchise cricket and then come back.
Even if they were every 2 years, I think we would still have that. We would still have that World Cup, 2020 World Cup, 50 over World Cup every couple of years. People would be building towards one or the other, right? And I think it means there's less cricket going on from an international perspective. That means that window.
T20 is the golden goose, isn't it, across whether it's international or domestic or franchise tournaments right now. So a 4-year cycle for ICC T20 World Cups just doesn't work. It's got to be every 2 years. I'd just say get rid of all bilateral white ball cricket. So literally, let's actually go onto a cycle where we've got World Cups every couple of years. So yes, there's maybe you split them. I don't know. I'm not going to sort of suggest the schedule, but I think if you had a world tournament every couple of years, whether it was 50 over or 20 over, certainly 20 over, I think needs to be more frequent than every 4 years. Ditch the bilateral stuff. Let them tune up playing as much high stakes franchise cricket as you like. I reckon you'd actually get better deals from a royalties and a TV perspective for those ICC T20 World Cups, with the franchise cricket providing the shop window for that. And then I think you'd also then allow what we're all talking about, which is more test cricket to be able to be played. So, we bemoan this in terms of the World Test Championship. Raj and I were talking about this on the way up. It isn't a real World Test Championship where you don't play everybody and you don't get to test yourself over long series in all conditions. That would open the schedule up. And I've got to be honest, I know you will know because you're an absolute badger, but I can't actually remember the last 50 over series England played. And it wasn't that long ago.
Didn't you play Australia?
Pakistan, weren't they in Pakistan?
But what I'm saying is I can't.
That's the point, right?
I can't remember. And I tell you what, if you asked me to name the side, I reckon I'd really struggle. Yeah. So, and that says a lot, I think, about it with, for absolute cricket nerds. And sometimes we can't remember the international cricket, certainly bilateral cricket that our teams have played outside of big test series.
I'm all for that. I love that idea. The only question that kind of jumped into my head when you were saying all of that is, how do you qualify? Like, they'd have to come up with some sort of Football World Cup kind of scenario where you're playing qualifying tournaments or playing,
and that's fine,
friendly games. They'll figure something out.
That's fine. But there's something on each game then, right? There's some jeopardy involved. There's something you're playing
which
for.
Which they
something.
have sort of put in with. It's too many games.
Well, this is where your India A thing comes in, right? They play all the qualifiers.
I like the tri series. The old, what are they? The Carlton and United tri series, quad series.
The quick 2020's questionable sponsor series.
yes, but still, those were exciting.
They were. The cricket was exciting.
Much better than a bilateral series.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. We better move on. I can hear people's tummies rumbling around the table. We've got one here from Tim, who's a Kiwi living in Madrid. I don't think that's his last name, but maybe just some extra information. He just wants to know, does Shimron Hetmeyer have the best hair in the IPL?
Yes. To answer your no from before, yes, he does. He's up there with the likes of Chris Gale, Carl Bulfin, and Michael Clark's Frosted Tips from back in the day. He's got great head of hair. What do we call it? It's 1992 Will Smith. I love it. It's really good. I like his hair.
Have you seen Marcus Smart in the NBA? He's gone green for so he's playoffs. For the playoffs. Yeah. So I think.
So would he be the gold? We call Shimron Hetmeyer the gold cap of hairdos in the IPL.
Fair enough. I like that.
Yeah. Are there any other candidates? I was trying to think about this. The only other I do quite like Suya Sharma, KKR, the mystery spinner. I like what he's going on with his hair. I don't tend to pay a lot of attention to hair.
Does Rahul Chahar still have the braids in?
I've just seen Binksy's face. For anyone who's not watching live, Binksy's face just kind of curled up.
The only time I mention Rahul Chahar is my wife thinks he's very attractive.
Oh, okay.
Particularly with the braids in. So I've often thought about, getting the braids just to see if I can get a bit more Chahar-like.
I think it's absolutely time to move on, isn't it?
I think, if we can get Baldy into some braids for next week's podcast,
so please do like and subscribe to the channel. Pop a comment in if you want to see Baldy with braids next week. Yeah.
Okay, there's 3 questions left I've got here. So Lead, who's at Borka Path on Twitter, asks, who are some surprising young standouts and who are some young players you want to see more of in this IPL?
Oh, great question.
Well, sorry, see more from. So young players that have done well and young players that have not done so well. This one is one that came in late, so you guys haven't prepped for.
No, not at all.
Initially, I kind of thought of the first kind of people that came to mind for me was Rinku Singh, obviously performing incredibly well, doing another score for KKR overnight. But another one was, Suya Sharma, who I just mentioned as well, looks a real talent. But Noor Ahmad, Afghani player, getting an opportunity. I feel like he's only like 17 or 18, very young.
And we talked about that in the preview, didn't we? I thought it was really good, so I'll give myself a shout out.
Oh, well
they've got Rashid Khan, and obviously I think that's going to help him, in that environment. And he looked brilliant. I think last night before, had a really, really good game. So really like the look of him.
And bowling important overs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Given responsibility and stuff. So yeah.
It's not a particularly groundbreaking, younger player to watch. But I watched Cameron Green last night, and that gave me nightmares in terms of this upcoming Ashes. He absolutely.
Well, he's just a better version of Mitch Marsh. He can bat, he can smash it, he can bowl it quick.
Mitch Marsh has done well in the last 2 years. I'm excited by that.
He was, he looked like Flintoff on steroids for that inning. So I am very, very worried about him, particularly if we produce these flat pitches in the Ashes.
Good. I like Yash Dul. Those are the 20-year-old. I think he started in the Under-19 World Cup a couple of years ago. He's now playing for Delhi. Yeah, he's still only 20, but his last 5 bats, he's got 1 and 2, but he got a 50. He had a 70 in the kind of rest of India versus Pradesh. So he's making runs in first-class level. But he's only got 2 games for the Caps, and he's only got 1 and 2. So I would like to see more from him because he's a tremendous talent.
Yeah, the player that I actually thought I wanted to see more from is Finn Allen. I know, and that's not he's not performing. That's in we never see him. I think I said it last week. This would have been a great tour for him to be in Pakistan. It would. There's sort of only so long, I think, that you can be in the IPL and sit on the sidelines and never get a chance. I think he has been surely soaking up a lot, being around Faf, being around Virat, all those kind of guys. It's sort of now time for him to get an opportunity. I don't know how he's ever going to get one in that star-studded lineup with Faf and Maxwell and those kind of guys. But I would just love to see him get a crack and see what he can do at that level. Okay, couple of quick ones to finish. Sachin from Mumbai asks, when is Arjun Tendulkar going to make his international debut?
Well, he's made his first-class debut.
I like the look of him. I like the look of him with up the top with the new ball. He looks to be a little bit dangerous. Might have to work on coming back in the later overs. I think who was it who put him 31? He went air miles, as Binksy would say at the end there. But do we know what he can do with the bat?
There's been talk that he's an all-rounder, but fairly good pedigree. But I haven't seen it, so I can't really answer that question.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier on, didn't we? I think India not shy of blooding players. I think I just wonder whether or not the family name makes them be potentially a bit more cautious than they would be if he wasn't a Tendulkar, because I think that puts a lot of pressure on on a young player, doesn't it? And I think even making his IPL debut and playing in a team where I think is Sachin still a mentor, or he's still got some official role. You've got to be you've got to be good enough not to get the nepotism call, as one of our friends would definitely say. So look, I just wonder whether they might exercise a little bit of caution, the Indian selectors.
I hope they do, because I would like to see him do what Natarajan has done, what Siva Varun did when he got into the Indian side, like bash the door down for a couple of years, take lots and lots of wickets and go, I am going to demand to be picked over multiple years and I'm going to force you to pick me, rather than him getting picked on potential. Because in the Indian side, there are 45 players that could easily go and play in the World Cup. And do they really need to pick anyone on potential? No, they don't. I would like to see him perform consistently and really bash the door down and earn his spot.
Well, and look, he's taken 2 wickets in this tournament, average of 41, economy rate of 10.5.
Yeah, let's not get carried away.
What I hope doesn't happen is him being 2 years away from being 2 years away for most of his career. You know what I mean? I hope that he does have a lot of success, because there will be a lot of pressure on him, as you say, because of his pedigree.
I will say, though, that over where he did get smashed a little bit, you could see that he was thinking about different plans. The Yorker, the wide Yorker, the slower half volley. I guess half volley's not great, but slower one. He just didn't quite execute. But yeah, he is thinking about it. So, maybe one day we'll see him.
The talent is definitely there, isn't it? And look, this is a good one to finish from Travis from Auckland. At the halfway point of the competition, we all made our predictions at the start of the comp. Now, let's name our finalists.
So I'll tell you what, for bonus points, if anyone can name the 4 that they had in the preview show, and then how that's different. Because I'm looking at this table.
Let's just say it's finalists. I can't name 4 semi-finalists.
Oh, we'll just do...
okay. Let's just two teams. Pick your two teams that are going to be in the final. Baldy, you're the furthest away.
All right, okay. Well, CSK and Rajasthan. I think they've started to separate themselves. And if CSK can continue on this run, they've got enough talent. I still think Rajasthan wins.
Gujarat, Rajasthan.
So you're sticking with... I think you had that at the start, didn't you?
I'm not changing. I still think that the Knight Riders and the Indians will make the final 4 as well.
So Knight Riders are going to have to go on a hell of a run, though. I want to see that.
Yeah, well, they've got Jason Roy and Dreyra, so good. No problems.
Okay.
I'm going to go with what I feel like are the form players and maybe the form teams, CSK and RCB.
Oh, I like that. You're sticking with RCB.
Look, I've got the Royals and Gujarat down on my piece of paper as well. Reverse of last year's final. Repeat of last year's final. I do think again it will be a reverse result, but Rajasthan's actually the one I'm less confident on now. Just the way the last few games are going. I still feel like Gujarat kind of has all the pieces there. Rashid Khan, Hardeep Pandya, David Miller. Shubman Gill. They're just a very, very good side, Gujarat, and they seem very professional. The way they go about everything is very, very impressive. CSK probably is the one that I do have my eye on to spoil this party as much as I would like the Sunrisers to just go on this challenge.
I did not have them in my 4 at the start of the season. They have surprised me.
Awesome. Well, boys, I think that does just about wrap up this episode. For any new listeners, please don't hold against us the fact that 3 out of the 4 people on this podcast have just completely changed their minds based on their predictions at the start. We're not all that fickle on the Top Order podcast, but do stay tuned. We'll be back with more IPL next week on the Top Order podcast. If you are at a loose end and want to dip into the back catalogue, please do so. We've got some cracking interviews from IPL coaches, actually, and IPL players from yesteryear and even the current crop as well in the back catalogue. So do go back and dip into that, or find us at www.thetoporderpodcast.com. Do subscribe and like on the YouTube channel, or give us a share and recommend the podcast to a friend, family member or colleague. It really helps others find the podcast. But for now, it is good night and God bless from us all here in Auckland. We'll see you next week on the Top Order podcast. Good night.